Is somebody online?
Yep, Shelley Deering is online.
Okay, good. Hi, Shelley. And then, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Give me a second. I'll second.
Okay, is there any objection to the agenda presented? I'm going to consider that approved. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this committee? Would anybody like to offer a motion about minutes?
I'll second that.
Is there any objection? Okay, no objection, and let's move on to the reason why we're really here, which is the bylaws. So since I sent out this last draft, I found a number of mistakes. Oh, there's more people. Sure. I found a number of mistakes, mostly having to do with capitalizing the word forward. Found some couple of places where the font wasn't right and made those changes. I found it like the was missing. Mainly, it's pretty close to the way I want it. For the purposes of our discussion. So, I think at this point, I'm opening it up to other board members to talk about things that they would like changed.
You have some comments, but I want the committee members to speak before I do.
Okay. Would it be easier to show the revised version or just talk through?
Well, let's, for starters, let's just talk it.
Okay.
Let's just fine. Unless we have 100 of them.
No,
That'll be a problem. But if there's just certain issues, let's just go through
Let's
your page, one page at a time, and then let the
Okay.
committee discuss it.
Let's do that.
Because I have some comments, right?
Okay.
Or do you want comments at the beginning or
Well,
what changes?
Well, I have some questions and potential changes.
Well, then, Chris, could we,
Oh, absolutely.
let Deb go first? I think,
I'd rather do it page by page,
yeah.
if we can do that, okay. And if somebody has a comment or question on the same page, I'll defer it rather than us going back through it over and over again, if that makes sense. One of my questions is, I know it was in the last round, but the very first thing is voting majorities, and it seems like I know it was there, but it didn't strike me until I looked at it with the lens of revision, that this is an odd place for voting majorities. I don't know if it needs to move. I'm just throwing it out there that it might belong somewhere in the meetings section.
And if I could jump, don't you think it was here just to have it be a reference? Isn't that the intent of having it in the very first?
I don't know. Maybe this is an appendix or an attachment or something. It's just odd to me that, and I don't feel strongly enough that it needs to move, but there is what was it, 170?
173 instructions in voting.
So, I mean, I was thinking that either it should be referenced in section 0172 or included in 0172.
I think all of these are extracted from the actual. Right. All of these are mentioned in the bylaws.
They are. My question is, if this is a form of release, because it's so specific to one section, I don't know that it needs to be the first thing in bylaws.
So we'll just, I made a note and we'll come.
I don't feel strongly, I'm not going to die on my sword on that one, for sure. My next question, if there's somebody that has questions prior to that.
No, that's okay. I wondered the same thing. I thought maybe it was something new that had just been put there so that we would, like a placeholder.
No, it was there. On page 6. The purpose of the hospital. My only question is, I have 2 questions. The purpose of the hospital, is it, does it reflect what the hospital says its purpose is? I mean, do we have the exact same language as the hospital does in this purpose?
I'll just try to answer that. I did not refer to any wording from the hospital about what the purpose is. I think this is mostly left over from what was written there before, somewhat modified.
That was what my fear was. And I don't think we have to hash it out now, but maybe administration can find out if there is a stated purpose somewhere else.
Mission statement.
Mission statement is different than the purpose of the hospital. Usually there's a purpose, like when you're filing your tax return, your 501, your, there's a purpose statement. I just want to make sure that we're not saying something, if the hospital has a purpose, that we're not saying something, we as a board are not saying something different.
There's some verbiage through the chair, some verbiage under in policy tech. I'm trying to pull it up.
While we're talking about that, and while we're on our eyes are on this section, all this text about quality patient care shall be provided to all persons. I can see why we want this statement in here somewhere, but this seems to me to be out of place. 0, 1, 2. I don't know if anybody else had that thought.
I did, but I also wanted to make sure that the language in here, that was my second question on this page, that the language in here matches the language that the hospital has in their EEOC.
Chair, same thing. I actually flagged this and I had a question whether or not it was necessary to list these. Could this statement just simply end discrimination?
Discrimination, the word discrimination is used colloquially to mean discrimination for bad reasons. But to discriminate, I mean, the purpose of the triage in the emergency room is to discriminate. So if you're being very literal, that you definitely want to discriminate in that you want to provide medical care to those who are sick and discriminate against those who are not sick. So I don't think that would serve the purpose. Does anyone else have any thoughts on it?
Just to follow on my train of thought, then I would go back to what Deb mentioned in making sure that this is an end is, one for one, what is already been defined somewhere else.
Does anyone know, do we have text on our website or anything?
I'm trying to pull it up.
I have thoughts on this one too, because we include pregnancy and that's a medical condition. There are lots of medical conditions. So I thought maybe that I understand about not discriminating, discharging pregnant person because of that, but I just wondered if we needed to have pregnancy in there or if it should be more broad. I don't know. I thought that one's unusual. It's almost like we're including any possible thing that we could discriminate on in this description.
The phrase sexual stereotyping seems out of place too, and that we're talking about natural origin, age, sex. We're talking about these characteristics of people, and all of a sudden we flip over to a behavior, and then go back to characteristics of people, gender.
I don't disagree. I think that this is an interesting verbiage that I have not seen before. But the bottom line is, the purpose of my question is it in alignment with what the hospital says? And if you guys can't find it now, I think we have one more shot.
Are you asking about the I think you're asking what the verbiage of all of 0112.
Yep.
Okay. I can see why people wouldn't want to take out the verbiage at the bottom. Well, the statement of non-discrimination, but maybe I'll just ask, are those words necessary in this place? Or would they be appropriate just somewhere else in policies, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know why we need to have this here. But that's just. I don't know why we need to have this.
It's something, I don't know, anybody else can weigh in, but it's not something that I've seen in bylaws in the past.
Joe, do you have any thoughts on it?
So that, tax filings, I guess, that's the only place I can think of.
Yeah, but tax filings are different.
Yeah.
Like everything in the kitchen sink.
I don't know if it belongs in bylaws as well, but
Well, would someone like to move to take it out or should we just?
I'm willing to move it out.
Does that need to be a formal motion?
I think so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The art of the deal is the deal. Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed what's going on. So we have a motion. Is there a second for the motion?
He wants to make a deal on my motion.
No. I was offering to make the formal motion if we need it.
Oh, gotcha.
Since yours is.
It's been fun.
I would second
Okay.
to remove this.
Is there any more discussion about this? Is there any comments from staff?
Did you say that motion?
Your motion was to remove that very long sentence, the quality patient care shall be provided. You go from purpose to that and it doesn't fit.
Are there any comments from staff? Moving.
it's new in this version. That was always the purpose of the board in prior versions. So I mean, this is new to purpose of the hospital or the statement specifically.
We're talking about this specifically, the statement, quality patient care shall be provided to persons without discrimination based on a large number of characteristics as well as the term sexual stereotype. The motion is to remove that statement. I don't want to just drag this on and on, but.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, then, are there any objections? I'm hearing none, so that passes, we take that out. Okay, I'm sorry, Deb, can you continue with your comments?
On the same page, this is another question. 0122, the general powers. Is this a quote from the code, the CBJ code about the hospital?
This is essentially was in there before, I think.
It's I was just curious where it came from.
There were some occasions where I looked up the CDG code and just looked to see what they said, and I don't remember whether this is one of them.
That was just a.
Should do.
No, I mean, the language feels dated, but I don't want to rewrite it because it was just it was a matter of curiosity. Looking at it.
Chris,
So it doesn't appear to be an exact word for word, but it's very close to paragraph A under general powers. Very close.
In Title 3.
Yes, in type word.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Okay.
Okay,
This is in section 113. Number 5. Just wanted to make sure that that aligned. 113. Number 5, to assume overall responsibility for the operation of the hospital.
I'm not sure I understand.
That was correct.
We
We
ready?
can talk about this at the last meeting, first reading, I guess, in this committee.
You said you did not?
I remember us talking about it. We talked about leaving it in because ultimately we are responsible for that. We are an operational board, but the person who's specifically responsible for the day-to-day through his team reports to us. So if something's going wrong, the buck stops with the board. So that was, I think that was
Yeah.
the gist
I
with.
think my understanding is we, you and I, and the other board members are legally responsible. Okay.
Page 7. Apparently this, I have no comment, other than that it didn't stick in my head the first time I read this, that we're supposed to be reviewing the bylaws annually. So I stuck a sticky on there just to remind myself. The other, on 0141.
Before we move on page 7.
Okay.
0123 contracting authority.
Mhm.
I think I did hear something about this in board meeting. There was, or it might have been in finance. There was a question about changing limits. And I wondered if it would make sense to add some very specific language here under contracting authority. And in my draft that I shared, my verbiage, I don't think it's up there, is the CEO may approve contracts up to a certain amount without board review. Contracts between two amounts require finance and audit committee, and then contracts exceeding that final amount would then require full board. Just to be very specific with this contracting authority.
I guess one thing that we haven't really talked about in this committee is just kind of the philosophy of what we're trying to accomplish with the bylaws.
Okay.
So I think in general, bylaws outline broadly authority, and it would be, I think it kind of be conflict of the spirit that I've been taught bylaws to put specific numbers, because bylaws have to be, it's a difficult process to change. Where if we put those into policies and procedures, then that's just under the board's purview. If we send this to CBJ, now we've locked those numbers in, and they're out of our control. So in general,
Indefinitely.
we don't want to put specifics. And this is very much like the relationship between statutes and regulations. I don't know if you've ever been through that process. But the legislature gives various entities like the Board of Nursing powers to require continuing education. They don't put the continuing education requirements in the statute. They turn that over to the Board of Nursing, and then the Board of Nursing puts those in regulation, and regulations can easily be changed. So I think that's kind of the spirit of what we're trying to follow here. We're broadly outlining the authority. We can put specifics in the policy. Is the rest of the board in agreement with that? From a committee?
I'm in agreement with you too, Hal. You know, I understand the spirit of what trying to do though. That's-
But we're, at the end, if we don't burn up too much time here going through this, we will briefly talk about the policies and procedures, which is our next big piece of work.
So if you don't mind me just going on, I don't have very many more.
Yeah, why don't we go through yours first, then we go back to
And
Chris.
we'll-
and we'll see.
Actually, I think it's great just to each section as we're just working through it. That way we don't have to keep backtracking because I'm having a hard time keeping it all straight, backtracking.
So in 0141, we have a doctor of allopathic or osteopathic medicine licensed. Allopathic is not a commonly used, to my knowledge. I didn't ask the staff about that. I was able to find, I printed a copy of the U.S. Department of Labor's definition of a physician. Includes only doctors of medicine, MDs, and osteopathic practitioners within the scope of their practice as defined by state law. And then it goes on to say no treatment or medical services performed by any other practitioner of the healing arts is authorized by this part. I mean, it goes on to more legalese in the Department of Labor. Now, the Department of Labor is certainly not the, the defining. I looked at several, but this was the most concise definition. So I guess the question is, since allopathic is not commonly used and not well defined for people like me, I had to look it up to see the exact definition and its origin. I would recommend that we
Well, since I'm the one who put it in here,
Yeah.
I'll just, maybe just say what I was trying to accomplish, and I don't care how we accomplish it. So the fear that I have, and this came up, Dr. Kenny was possibly going to come on the board. My fear is that maybe some chiropractor gets put on the board, and maybe optometrists. And now through some interpretation of what a physician is, we have two people on the board who are in some sense physicians, or at least they want to use that word. And now maybe we get somebody like Dr. Urata, hypothetically, wants to join the board, and somebody's saying, well, no, you can't because you already got two physicians. So I want to eliminate that possibility in the future. So I chose this word allopathic because it's a term I'm familiar with. I'd be happy to accomplish the same thing some other way.
I'm going to look to the staff on this one. I mean, like I said, this definition specifically references MDs and POs.
I'd say from our med staff's point of view, it's going to be MDs. So if you change from a doctor of allopathy to medicine, it would kind of accomplish.
Yeah, I think we would also have to put in a definition of what allopathic is, because I didn't.
Well, I was going to scratch that. So you're replacing that with medicine, which would be the common, what we're used to, right?
So,
ODs and ODs.
and this does what you have done in the, one of the changes that you've made with parenthetical references. It has doctors of medicine, MD in parens, and osteopathic practitioners.
Okay, so let me go. Let me go right to make a change.
You put MD.
Through the chair,
Yes,
I just looked up a doctor of medicine definition, and the definition is a medical professional who diagnoses and treats illness and injuries. MDs are also known as physicians.
the problem by leaving it like that is then chiropractors, naturopaths would claim that too. See, where are we? So,
You also have nurse practitioners because you need a doctorate in nursing.
yeah,
So can I just ask another question, Mr. Chair?
yes, please.
So Your concern was that this would, because the bylaw specifically state only two can be physicians.
Correct.
That this would be limiting. That if there's a broader definition, it would limit the number of
It might preclude
conclude.
having what we think of as physician. Somebody might argue.
And I understand that, but if we define it as an MD or a DO, we're allowing all those other categories to apply
Correct.
and be appointed. If that was your
That's
concern.
correct. We could have all chiropractors, but still
Exactly.
two physicians.
And does that mean what your concern was?
My concern is that we'd have two people who are not MDs or DOs on the board, and someone would interpret that there are already two positions, and so now we can't have. That's what I want to.
And that's what I was suggesting with putting in MD and DO.
And we're dragging this on too long. One of the problems that I have with using MD is there are equivalent foreign degrees. So if you were a graduate of a medical school in Australia or Great Britain or Ireland, you would not receive an MD degree.
I think that's why we put license in the state of Alaska in there.
But I think somehow they can get licensed.
Well, they have to meet the requirements.
They have to meet the
Then
requirement,
they are MD.
but they are not given an MD degree.
But their license is MD, right? That's the license type.
Yeah, it's like a reciprocal thing. It's like I'm an RN in Indiana, I'm an RN in England because
In Alaska, someone can apply to get a veterinary license with a bachelor of veterinary surgery from Ireland or England, be licensed without ever receiving a DVM or DMV degree in the United States. So we're dragging this on too long. Alyssa, he's a doctor of medicine, and then I put parenthetically for osteopathic medicine license, I'll put parenthetically DO. And perhaps if there's still any question, we'll discuss this at the board level. Okay. Any more? Good.
No, a couple of these were just notes to myself.
Okay.
That I had to absorb my first couple of passes through. That
153 is number 8. We've used EEO continuously up to that point, and then we say chief executive officer.
158.
So it's just to be consistent.
Yes.
It's 153 number 8.
153.
oh, that's the end.
Page 10. Okay, thank you for that. Make that change. Consider that clerical in nature. Anything, oh, yes.
I just had a clerical question as well. While we're moving through, I don't want to go back too far. Under 152, to that, number 3. I just had a question about why we said date and then we said later time.
Or maybe if the person resigns effective by like January 1st or something, would they give notice 2 months early?
So shall take effect on the date of receipt or at any time, at any later time, not any later date.
That's interesting.
It's just
It's a
when
weird,
I read it, it was like, that sounds weird to me. But I mean, no harm, no foul, I'm just raising it.
Let's see, I had it in my.
Maybe change it.
Looked up.
Yeah.
What's the number again, please?
Number 3.
152, number 0152, number 3 on page 1.
Oh, I'm in the wrong, that's right. Number 3, any officer will resign the office at any time by giving written notice to the board. Such resolution should take effect on the date of receipt or any other, you want that changed to date? Date specified?
Maybe any other dates. Specified.
So I've changed it to receipt or at a later date specified. Is that I hear?
Yes.
We're good with that? Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you for that. Yep.
My next one is 0154, number 6, joint conference committee. If somebody has something before that, let's, one of the other committees go for it.
Chris,
I just had a question on number 3,
we're
under 0154, Suzette. Right, yeah, if you could look at that first paragraph, the last sentence. The duties and responsibilities of the governance committee are to assist and make recommendation to the board in the areas of board governance, development, performance, and effectiveness. Is it meant to mean board governance, board development, board performance, and board effectiveness?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's my, I'm sorry.
Shut up.
in the areas, that's how I interpreted it. Board governance, board development, board performance, and board effectiveness. If it's not clear, would somebody want to make a suggestion? Is that clear to you?
It is to me, but
Lisa, what do you think?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I think- joint conference committee. Practice in the past has been to include the immediate past presidents on the joint conference committee. But for the last several years, once we are, as folks rolled off, and Kenny had 4 years as the president, we didn't have an immediate past president on the board, so there was no one to fill that spot. I don't know that it was in the bylaws, but it has been our practice to include the immediate past president in the joint conference committee. So the question is, do we want to leave it to the current elected officers without the immediate past president?
Anyone, we have an opinion, but I'd like to hear
You know
what,
what the benefit is to doing that? I mean, I can imagine, I think I know what the benefit is, but I just want to be clear, what was the intent of doing that in the past?
Basically, the intent was institutional memory for the relationship with so if you have a set of all new officers who have not participated in joint conference, you've got someone with that institutional memory. That's the intent that I understood.
Chris,
I'm in agreement with that. My opinion as well is for continuity. I think it makes more sense to include them than it does to exclude.
is any comments from staff?
Would you want to say a past board president, or at least would you want to have it to say a member of the past executive committee?
We don't have executive committee.
Executive.
Or one, because what happens if your board president finishes their year and is no longer on the board, but the vice president or secretary is still on the board, but no longer in that role?
We want to be careful that we're not then Between the three, especially if all three said, oh, I'd like to do this. I mean, we wouldn't want all of them,
You add with the option of,
including,
Or did you?
So the rest of the committees just go through with the chair appoints the members. Can we have something like that here? Can 0153, the president shall appoint members of all committees. Why would it be different for this committee? That way you could have the choice. I mean, there could be someone else on the board that's not in one of these defined positions that you really want at that meeting for whatever
Yes.
reason. Like Dr. Raster wasn't vice chair and you wanted to have a joint committee, you probably want him involved in something like that, because it involves us fast.
So
That's
would
just my
you
thought.
include the three officers and any other member?
And one other member at the
Appointed.
discretion of the board president.
I like, if we're gonna go down this track, I like saying any other members appointed by the president. And then that leaves some flexibility. Hopefully, the president will have enough judgment not to put too many people. I agree. Isn't that clerical? Okay.
Just before we
Yes.
leave,
Let's,
we're still on 154, right?
yes, we're at 154. We went through, yeah.
So that, could you go to number 4, planning committee? I had a question about this B. A makes a lot of sense to me. I don't have any question about that. B seems to be this afterthought. The committee should also consider building maintenance and fixed assets. What exactly does consider mean in this? Do you have a sense of what that means? Consider?
I would think that would just, it's just a way to say that's part of the terms of reference. So if the governance committee starts dabbling in maintenance, it's outside their terms of reference. I don't know what other people think. Do you have a specific change you would like to see?
Well, I just was wondering if building maintenance and fixed assets should not be included some way and in that definition of the total hospital program.
oh, I see, just having one paragraph, instead of A and B.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on?
I had the same impression that was it. It's really bigger than that because it's one of the things that we have asked for in the past is to be included in our reports, and that is preventive maintenance and the schedule of you know what's coming up for budgeting purposes. You know, how far do we have roof replacement coming up in 3 to 5 years that we don't have the reserves, you know, those kinds of things. So that has been under it's very specific, you know, building, a part of building maintenance, preventive maintenance, and a replacement schedule.
I'm actually looking at a copy. Is that a different paragraph than that? And it does include fixed assets and facility maintenance. Is that in the paragraph?
Is it that version?
That was probably my suggested change.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, thank you.
So would somebody like to give me,
The verbiage.
yeah, what would you like it changed?
After the word program,
What is it? Where's the word program?
second line under A,
Oh, okay. To ensure the total hospital program. Okay.
and just a comma, and the phrase inclusive of fixed assets and facility maintenance. income.
Elizabeth, continue to make it, please.
Inclusive of fixed assets and facility maintenance.
Okay, so now it reads, the proposed wording reads, the committee shall assist in the preparation and modification of long-range and short-range plans to ensure the total hospital program, comma, inclusive of fixed assets and facility maintenance, comma, is meeting and will continue to meet the healthcare needs of the community, so on and so forth.
Correct.
What is the committee's will on this? So we'll consider.
Yeah.
We'll consider that just as a clerical matter. Okay,
Yes.
next.
Before you go on, Devin, 5, you need to delete B.
One member of the quality and compliance shall be appointed annually by the board to serve as the board liaison. Okay. You want that deleted?
Yeah, we no longer have a quality improvement committee because we're doing our 8th raise. It's a different process now.
Right, the committee good with that? All right, good, thank you for that.
This is really small and I'm jumping to 0172 motion for voting.
Okay.
And it just may be me, but in the last sentence, if the motion to rule the conflict, is it supposed to be is de minimis?
And the I was left over from is, yeah, so that, and the version I'm looking at, the I has been taken away, is that what?
It's in my copy, but
Yeah, I apologize for that, that was my mistake. That's been. Oh, yes, please.
This would be a good place to move that first page.
Move that.
yeah, the one that I asked, why is the voting?
I think all of that voting stuff is extracted from somewhere. So it doesn't need to be moved. It's either at the beginning as a helpful guide, or else it's just not needed. I believe. But Chris, anyway, what were you trying to bring to our attention?
On, yeah, in that second, number 2, that long paragraph,
Okay.
couple thoughts. The first one is, how does a declared conflict of interest come to light?
A board member has to declare that.
Okay. And then, is there a requirement for a board vote to determine if it meets the Venice standard?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm just telling you what I intended as I wrote this.
okay,
We didn't have anything about the de minimis in here.
right.
And I started thinking, well, some people who are cautious would declare any kind of little conflict.
Yes.
Other people who are not cautious enough, might have their wife owning the business that's the board only hears about these conflicts if they are declared by the individual, or if it comes out in the newspaper because somebody else dug it up. But sometimes these conflicts are quite de minimis, and we've seen that with members of medical staff who are on the board who we have questions about the emergency room. Well, how does this thing work or something? And it was important for the board to be able to have that expertise in here. That was my thinking.
I agree with
Putting
that.
this all in here.
And so to follow my logic train, I'm just wondering, is it worth us considering defining that?
I think that has to be left to the judgment of the board at the time. How would you define it?
One suggested that I found was a conflict is determined de minimis if it involves less than X amount in direct financial interest or is unrelated to matter under consideration decision-making authority.
I
It's very clear.
should do less talking here, but I would think that we would keep specifics out of this, and that if we have some ideas about specifics, so that we put that in policies and procedures, but that's just me. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I am always a fan of in documents that are meant to be more in perpetuity and guidelines at high level, that it'll be less and more and incorporate by reference. As we have done with the code of conduct. So I guess, and we sort of did with the spending authority,
Move it to policy.
move it into policy. So that's as long as it's somewhere and it's incorporated by reference into the.
But some of this it'd be very hard to do. We're in a board meeting, the time's going by, some emergency room physician is on the board, says, well, this could affect juvenile emergency medical associates. Nobody knows. Nobody's going to take the time to have an economist figure out how much money's involved. It should be we should allow the board the judgment to say, you're not going to benefit. You personally aren't going to benefit very much, and we need your expertise. You see what I mean? If we put some money amount in there, then how is that calculated in a short time in a board meeting? It creates a lot of complexity. That kind of undoes the need for the board to act pragmatically and swiftly. But anyway, I'm bringing it up. That's just my thought. Lisa, what do you think?
You know, I think I agree with you and you know, it's a funny thing. It's hard to define what a conflict of interest is, but I think we all know what it is when it happens. I mean, and so I think trying to define it is getting maybe a little too specific. And so, you know, so when I think about the episodes over the last year or two, it was obvious, you know, in a feeling that there's a conflict here. And there can be so many different conflicts, and sometimes it's not financial. So, I mean, financial is the most common one that we think of, but there can be other conflicts with politics and things like that. So,
Sure.
So I think trying to define it, it's just better to outline it the way we have that big broad description.
Okay.
It's just my thought.
Okay.
Are there any thoughts from staff?
And this is the question for staff as well. That 0181. If there's something before, if anybody's got a comment before 0181. Number 2. I think the language, the minutes book is dated. I think we need to just define that there is a common place secure, however we want to. Yes, we needed to keep minutes in perpetuity that we can go back to and reference, but I think that's
So 1980.
Well, now that you point this out,
I know it doesn't.
if it's minutes possessive here, then that doesn't make any sense. It's their book. Okay. Can somebody give me, okay, let me find it here, 181. Can somebody offer some alternative? All minutes shall be filed in the office of the CEO, period. How does that sound?
That's
It's electronic.
It's electronic.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fine.
and take out the reference to minutes book in number 3. I think, is it in number 3? There's another one.
Wait a minute, I'm still stuck here on 2. So I'm changing 2 to all minutes shall be filed in the office of the CEO, period.
And it should be as a permanent record of the acts of the board.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's,
It has to say that it's
Okay,
a
yes.
permanent record.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then,
Maybe
but now it
no,
reads,
there isn't another reference. Never
it
mind.
now reads, all minutes shall be filed in the office of the CEO as a permanent record of the acts of the board.
Yeah.
Okay, there was nothing in 3 then?
No,
Okay. Please continue then.
I don't think I have any others. Maybe. Yeah, I don't think I have any others.
Okay, can we start from the beginning? Chris, when, I kind of hit you off before. Let's just start from the beginning with anything you have.
it was page 16 under 321. Just continue down. I had a question about what happens if there's a disagreement on bylaw amendments and whether or not that requires some kind of language on, on process.
Can you point me to the sentence here?
Well, we say that in the last sentence, neither the medical staff nor the board may unilaterally amend the staff bylaws. And the paragraph above says essentially that the board approves the medical staff bylaws. So what happens when there's a conflict? And is there a process that they follow? Should we reference here? Joint committee? Just ask.
I believe, and Gilman, correct me, if it's legally, if there's a conflict with the board, I mean, you could weigh in and make the decision. It's your as bylaws. There's been set bylaws, but it's up to you. I mean, you have legal authority to do whatever you want.
You can reject them in whole or parts of them, and they need to either go back and revise them and bring them back to you. So
Okay.
you do not have to accept the bylaws in their entirety or parts of them.
As it says, it reads now, with the approval of the board, comma, the medical staff may adopt bylaws, so on and so forth, conducted work, and eligibility the hospital staff. The medical staff bylaws shall be submitted to the board for approval and shall not become effective until approved by the board. So until the board approves it.
They're not effective.
Yeah, so there's the conflict has to be resolved by submitting something that's acceptable to the board. Okay, that's fine.
And the last sentence basically ensures that the board can't change the bylaws without input from the medical staff.
Okay, thank you. That's very.
Okay, so could we, I apologize for running up so much time on this, but can we go back from the beginning and just take another pass here? I know there were some things that we skipped. Okay, so on page 6, 0112, Gail, did you might have sent me something, but I did not, and I apologize if I missed it, but I don't think I got some exact words to put in here.
There was not any words for there. The only thing that Kim and I were to get back to you, and Kim and I talked, there will be bylaws that we will be writing for Wildflower Court. We're going to have to do a separate bylaws for them that will refer to this document for the board.
So for now, do I just take out number 3?
That's what I would suggest. Kim, do you concur?
You concur? Okay, so I'm making that change. Actually, going back to the beginning, I think one thing that we didn't really resolve. One thing we didn't really resolve, what about this voting majority? So you're leaving that in there.
I don't feel strongly one way or another that it was really a good question on my part. I would actually take it out and put it in the board handbook as a reference tool. so that they don't have to search the bylaws.
Other committee members, what do you think?
My thought was if, and I like that idea. I like that idea. You might just make mention of it in section 172 that voting majorities will be followed as and wherever they're located. That's my reference.
And I think that the voting, these voting majorities are in the bylaws. They're not in policy. These are bylaws. In order to,
Separate from appearing like this.
in order to appoint the
Each one of them
CEO,
is in that section.
in order to
Right.
appoint a CEO, there must be 6 positive votes, 6 members. That came out of the bylaws. That's in the bylaws.
Oh,
And so this is here just as a handy thing, so you don't have to go dig it out.
oh, well then. It's already there.
I guess I just don't think it belongs where it's at. I mean,
Okay, so we have
it's kind
a,
of like a cheat sheet.
yes, it is a cheat sheet. So we have a suggestion to move it to the policy. What do you think? Okay, is that the will of the committee? Making this out. Okay, so what do we got? Purpose. Last word. Okay, so I think we've got all my questions answered. Should we just turn the page here, one at a time, one last time? And see if anything else jumps out. Contracting authority, there legislative. Even though it pains me to capitalize a common noun, I tried to go and parenthetically introduce these common nouns that are used in place of proper nouns. And I was very consistent about the word board, but I think I've got those all straight now. We're good to accept this, subject to me going through one more time, because I've taken some things out, get the spacing right. And update the table of contents and just those kinds of stuff. All right. That took a while. I apologize if I had a section. Are we ready to have a motion to approve this version of the bylaws, subject to very minor clerical edit?
And is it not also subject to, somebody was going to take a look at if there was another purpose statement with the hospital?
I think that was what they were talking about with including Wildflower Court.
But are the other two statements in alignment with?
Through the chair, I could have swore I read something that Chuck Bill put in place a long time ago about the hospital philosophy. I can't find that, but I know I did it because I used it for a project in school, but I can't find it. So the only thing I can, that it reverts back to is the mission, vision, and values.
So what would the committee, how would the committee like to see? Nobody said anything. I've heard said too much already, but I think 1 and 2 reflects more or less the discussions we had with our previous interim CEO about what the purpose of the hospital is. How we got in trouble by straying off the path. I'm happy to leave this the way it is, but I'm listening for somebody to give me some direction.
My only comment, as I said, was I'm fine with those as stated, as long as there's not a different purpose statement somewhere else in hospital documents.
Erin just read through everything. She said she could find
Okay. So so are there any left, if I'll turn to staff, any other comments from staff about anything specific or general? I think we're ready for a motion to accept this and pass it on to the board. Do my best.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this version of the bylaws with the small grammatical changes that Al is going to make.
Hopefully the grammatical, but small clerical things involving punctuation and spacing.
And we did make a couple of wording changes.
Good, I mean, but I think the motion is worded so that I've got flexibility to
Right.
capitalize a word or something.
Yeah.
A second.
Is there any objection? Okay, then we'll pass that on.
Ask Dr. Cheney.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, there are other board members. Yeah. Are there any, before we finalize this, any other comments from any other board members?
If you're asking if I have an objection, I don't.
Or, okay, or even comments?
No, I think everybody hit on the questions I had, so I'm all good with it also.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with this. I should have asked your comments before now. Thanks for putting up with this long discussion. Okay, then I'm checking that off. We're going on to self-examination. This committee is charged with doing some kind of self-examination of the board effectiveness. And we talked about this at the last meeting. So the last of these board self-examinations that we did that I was part of, I was very dissatisfied with it. It was very tedious, lots of questions, long questions, lots of clauses, lots of fuzzy jargon. And at the end, we got this hugely complicated analysis that didn't really lead to anything, any changes in board activity. So I had proposed something last time. I proposed just something simple, asking simple questions like, is the board doing a good job? One thing or another, asking just yes or no questions, and then having some open-ended questions like, how could we improve? So that was my suggestion. I hope since then, the other committee members have given us some thought as to how you would like to proceed. So I've got no stake in what I proposed last time. I just mainly wanted to offer that as something for you to respond to and think about. So at this point, I'd like to hear what other committee members think we should do for board self-examination.
I am in full support of a more simplified, useful. Okay.
I would agree with that. When you make it overly complex, you get lost in mired in details that don't really add to the purpose or the intent of why you were doing an assessment in the beginning. So I think that your suggestion of moving to a simplified way for us to self-assess makes a lot of sense. I didn't do any further research or work on it, however, since our last meeting.
Do you have any thoughts?
As I said earlier, less is more. So if you can get a concise accounting, accounting is not the right word, but evaluation of or review how we stand up as a board individually and in total, rather than, as you said, the long, tedious, 40 check the box and comment that provides us with tallies, but not really pass forward.
Are there any comments from the other board members who are online? How you'd like to see a board self-examination be structured?
I agree with what has been said. I think something that's less but gives us good information. And then just to make sure that after it's completed, we analyze and come up with a plan of what we can do to improve.
Well, then if the committee's, here's my proposal for the committee. I would be willing to take what I've already done and expand that and check it and come back to the committee at our next meeting with a survey draft. And it would be, I'll jump off what I had submitted before, which is just just some questions that require yes or no answers, and then open-ended, how could we do better? I would then, then we can talk about it. That'll be routed to you before our meeting, so you can offer some specific changes. I would suggest that we give it to the board members. That's kind of an obvious thing, but I would also suggest that we route this to a senior leadership team. I'd really like to know what they think. I'd also like to route it to the med exec, so boards that hear what they think. And I would also suggest that we route it to the union. I mean, the entities that the board should be hearing about should be not just ourselves, but we should be hearing what other people think. So anyway, that's my suggestion. And
Well, and actually do it that way, then it becomes, it's not just board self-examination, it's then also having others evaluating too. So it's actually two, right?
Well, but the board self-examination then has some context.
Would you include CBJ?
Well, we could do that too, yeah. I
think that's something for us to think about and discuss at the.
Well, I'm just throwing this out now so that people will think about it, so that when we meet next time, we can talk about something specific. Okay. All right, we're not going to take any more action on that. I'm just going to put a check mark. And then finally, so we can get out there and go cross-country skiing or whatever we want to do, we've got the board policy manual. So I hope you've all given that some thought. I went through it and I see there's all kinds of punctuation mistakes, misspelled words, semicolons that appear for no reason that I can find. The word executive committees, plastic, specifically 0400. What is that one? That's got some wacky things that I'd like to point out to you.
I really love that there's one of them that's just reserved and has nothing in it.
Here's the one that before any employee of Bartlett Regional Hospital testifies before any legislative body, the board must be notified, and the notification must allow time for the board to understand the issue and make an appropriate decision. That means if some mother wants to go talk about the school's operating budget, the board has to be notified, and the board has to study the budget of this school that the mother wants to go. This 0400, I think, is problematic since I'm referring you to that. Under 0420, there's criteria for evaluation. There's nothing in there that I can find that I would call a criterion, and so on and so forth. So if it's the committee's wish, I will try to go through and do something similar to what I do with the bylaws, comb these things out. Then when we meet next time, I'll provide a draft to you before the next meeting. And then hopefully we could kind of go through it page by page, and everyone could develop his or her own list of wishes for modifications on the draft that I will provide. How does that sound?
Did you guys send a copy of this?
It was in the board packet. I mean, in the board packet. I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Al, for volunteering to do that. The only thing that I would say on the one that 0400, I think the one section that you identified as problematic is problematic. But think that it's important for the CEO and senior leadership to know if somebody's testifying on hospital matters.
Yeah.
And specifically on hospital and healthcare matters. And depending on the topic needs to come up to the board, so we're not, the board is blindsided, which is the same thing that in theory should happen at CBJ and any other corporation, whereas, we're a city.
I'm fine with that, but I just think if we should mean what we say,
Exactly.
that's my issue.
Yeah. I just have concerns about, and we can't tell people what not to say when they have to run.
No. No, but
You should be notified. Like, I understand typically we get notified until we get some, but there's no restriction. I just want to make sure that we're not trying to infringe on people's rights. Thanks for all the same page.
Okay.
Is it, you have any comments on this help before?
Yes, please.
I guess my only two issues were for 210 physician recruitment plan, which doesn't exist right now.
Mhm.
So maybe you could touch base on that. Get there.
Oh, yes, and yes, we did talk about that.
I want to make sure I talked about it at the committee so everyone understands.
Yeah, I think we should just take a moment and have everybody turn to 210. Because I think what I'm going to propose is that we just take this all out and put this in the hands of the CEO. Thank you for pointing that out. You have, everybody see what we're talking about here? So why would we want to greatly simplify this? Because there may be instances where we want the CEO to get going on recruitment, and we don't want this. We don't want the board bogging this all down. And the CEO, the CEO is under our control already. So the CEO, I personally don't have any worry that the CEO is going to do something. Doesn't want us to do that. Isn't part of our strategic plan. Any comments from the committee or other board members?
Sorry, I'm just reading through this section.
Um, 0520.
You're
I'm not,
portion, okay.
but that necessarily needs to. Has that been a policy of the hospital?
Love that Kim had a call right at this moment.
Conveniently.
Kim and I actually had a case a few months ago that we had a non-viable pregnancy later term that we were trying to find our hospital policy on this, and we searched, I don't know what to do about it. And I just found this and I just said, hey, look at 520, Kim. And she said, I would never have thought to look here. And I said, I didn't know it was in this either.
I don't think it belongs in the board policies. I mean, maybe.
We need it somewhere though, because this,
And
because we didn't know this existed here.
I guess it's something that we need to chew on. But if this is the policy of this hospital, the hospital needs to know it,
Yeah,
not just the board.
yeah, this was, yeah, we had no idea this was here, either of us.
Well, let's not try to make any decisions.
No.
Thank you very much for bringing this up. I saw this at the time. Oh, interesting, but I didn't think about changing it. But now we're all on notice that when we show up at our next meeting, we need to be prepared to do something with this. You take it out, move it somewhere else, change it.
And when we present it, if we have board members that feel strongly it needs to be redlined, regardless of what we do to it, if we make changes to that section, we need to address that so that it can be a broader discussion because it is a controversial issue.
Chris, did you have your hand up?
I, after reading through, 210, the physician recruitment sections that you've asked about,
Mhm.
I have a question about the physician recruitment policy. It's being referenced here, but where would I find?
Right, I don't think some of these things exist.
Okay, okay. Good idea.
Okay, so we're 15 minutes past 4. Any other, are we ready to move on to committee comments and questions? Comments, any comments from anyone online?
None from me.
Any comments from staff? Or Chris, do you have a comment?
I just have one. In the revision that I had shared, there was that one specific verbiage that I had suggested for contracting delegation and actual numbers, and we said, let's put that in policy. Are we talking about this, the board policy document?
Could be,
That's-
yeah.
or that's- okay. Because the other two that I had suggested, and I didn't raise because they too are also specific. So we could just put them in, I'll put them in this bucket and we'll talk about it. That's fine.
Or just, that didn't work very well. The doing the track changes and then it got changed to PDF.
Right.
So I looked carefully at your version. I couldn't find it. So in the future, for people who want to make changes and get it routed, do something like put your comments in all caps and highlight them in a separate color, something like that, so that we can definitely see.
Or put your initials at the beginning of your comment, something like that.
Yeah.
Correct, some applications will identify who the comment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's what I'm used to.
But this is going to get changed to a PDF, so keep that in mind.
And that's what I failed to realize. When what was shared, I opened it up, I'm like, oh, this is gonna help anyone anywhere.
I couldn't find what you wanted. Okay, so,
I have a comment.
oh,
I
please.
just want to thank you for taking this on and doing the heavy lifting. Looking through everything and making all the language and grammar and consistent. So I appreciate it.
I haven't made it all consistent yet. I'm very close. Thank you for that.
The chair, I have a quick question. I'm sorry. Liz.
I said one thing, we are bringing the delegation and spending authority policy back through finance. So that is going to be in the packet. And that's what we've used in the past for the delegation.
Okay.
So we're all aware. That's all I have.
Yeah, well, just to follow up, Mr. Terry, if I may. My experience is that the spending authority changes every couple of years based on inflation and specifics of contracting. So you want it to be, you definitely don't want it in a document that has to be approved by the assembly. It needs to be approved by the board, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in the board policies. It can be a policy that we have to approve, but not necessarily codified in our policies, if that makes sense. Just the fact that we are obligated to to regularly review and update the spending policy. In some cases, you want to lower it if you're in a budgetary crisis. In other cases, as inflation happens, you want to maybe raise the spending policy. So you don't want to go from month to month or quarter to quarter changing it, but it needs to be dynamic enough to wait for administration and flexibility to make recommendation or the board to make recommendation to the based on current circumstances. Any
Did you have the view?
And just for clarification, so for the next meeting, we're bringing this back with the changes that we need on there
I'm sorry,
for
what
the,
are we talking about?
for the,
We've approved the bylaws. The bylaws are going to the full board at our next meeting. Now, at this committee's next meeting, I'm gonna do something like I did with the bylaws. I'm gonna go through and try to clean up the spelling and whatnot and make some changes just on my own, like I did with the bylaws. And then we will go through it page by page and everyone will have an opportunity to say, I don't like that. I think I'd rather have this. And hopefully people will speak up. Not just the committee members, staff.
that was my question. There's just reference to Ashland in there, and it's just a small change because now they're AHA, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll make.
And
sure-
that will probably go right, they'll probably go right past me.
So I'll make note of it.
Anything else? We're supposed to have our next meeting to be arranged, but did we already establish?
Those dates that we set in the first meeting in January. Update.
But we haven't, my recollection is we haven't. We set it on a bi-monthly cadence with this to be an interim so that we could meet the assemblies, because the bylaw changes require 2 readings of the board, first reading, and then the second reading is when they're approved. So in order to make that April meeting of the assembly, we had to have this.
And I think I suggested, that what were the meetings at 7:30? Sleep. I was hoping for something a little bit later in the day myself, but I could make 7:30 if need be. But I'd rather
I'm
not.
fine with 3.
Pardon?
I'm fine with 3 o'clock.
Yeah, two good meetings quarterly, but this meeting is not part of it.
Bi-monthly was what we had originally, wasn't it? Or was it quarterly?
It was quarterly.
Was bi-monthly. Quality.
Quality compliance.
I know somebody was.
So that would, so Jan,
We'd have to meet sooner than April. If we're hoping to make an April meeting.
Well, the bylaws will be approved first reading will be February, second will be March. And then
so this committee's done with the bylaws. So that was our urgent thing.
Yes.
So do we need meeting in April? Keep us on track, but does anyone have a day that you'd prefer? Okay. Yeah.
Because my point of view, if we have policies we know we're outside of compliance on today, I would advocate for a meeting sooner rather than later, so we can amend the policies, we can protect them. So we can actually have something that we're not having today.
Which is why we're escalating the bylaws, because we made the changes to the committee structure. And we eliminated, it did go to the assembly to get rid of the executive committee, but we made the other committee changes. So
So
now,
what would people think about the week of March?
If we retreat on the 14th.
Correct. I'm thinking Monday, Tuesday. back in March, not April.
Yeah, the suggestion was we should get rid of these, we should do something about these policies we're not following. We should bring ourselves into compliance with them.
Whatever day, for everybody's fine.
Everybody
In the entire week.
I'm sorry, Richard.
If you're saying the 10th or works for me.
For me.
And the
March.
March.
Meeting is on Tuesday, so I would choose not to do it on Tuesday.
Tuesday's been. Okay, what would anybody think about March at
3:00.
March 10th?
March 10th, 3:00. Okay, and Suzette, can you send out? All right, and I will try to get some progress moving on things, draft. Strictly for discussion as soon as possible, probably in the next week, I think.
Thanks again.
Okay,
And I guess we're adjourned.
it took so long.
It was good, a good discussion.
No.